The Wall Street Journal just put out an article titled Biden's Mortgage Relief Fuels Higher Housing Prices, with emphasis with quotations around the word relief. The reason being is because this article talks about how the FHA program has been abused by not just the borrowers, but as well as the Biden administration, and how they hid the fact that there's over 400,000 foreclosures that should have hit the market that didn't, and how currently there's over 1 million home loans under the FHA program, backed by the FHA program, that are defaulted on the mortgage, on their monthly mortgage payment. But first, let's understand what an FHA loan is. An FHA loan is a loan that is backed by the U.S. government. So FHA stands for First Time Home Buyers Administration, and what this agency does is they back these FHA loans. So it's important to understand the government doesn't directly lend money for these loans. However, when the bank approves a loan based off the FHA standards, the U.S. government will back that loan 100%. So the banks love these loans because no matter what, the bank will always be paid for the principal balance that's owed on that loan, and they won't lose out on their money. The FHA does for the home borrower is that it allows it's much more flexible on the requirements to obtain this loan compared to conventional, where you just go directly to the bank and get a loan. So borrowers can have as high as 50% DTI. That DTI stands for debt to income ratio. They can have as low as a 580 credit score, and they can put down as low as 3 to 3.5%. And in some cases, some banks were even offering 0% down. And a rule in 2023 that was passed allowed for borrowers with lower credit scores and lower down payments to get a better mortgage rate, and as well as lower lending costs compared with, let's say, somebody that's putting a higher down payment and a much better credit score. Now, I'm pretty sure you're already thinking to yourself, that doesn't make any sense. If you are better with your finances, you're putting a higher down payment, which means the bank, and retrospectively the U.S. government, is taking on a less of a risk lending you the money. You should have benefits, not for the borrowers that have lower credit scores and lower down payments. So back to the Wall Street Journal article. Now, this article highlights the fact that there's 13.5% default rate on these FHA loans currently outstanding across America. You have over 1 million loans that are in default, and you have over 400,000 loans that are delinquent. So essentially, this puts these type of loans in the category of subprime loans. And subprime loan lending was one of the major reasons we had a housing crisis back in 2008. And amongst these FHA borrowers, all in total, over 66%, that's over 2/3 of borrowers that get an FHA loan, have over a 43% DTI, meaning all the debts, including their new mortgage payment, added together accounts for almost half of their monthly gross income. That's pre-tax, that's not post-tax. So essentially, if you're paying almost 30% total in state and federal taxes, and all your debt is almost half of your income, that's 80% of your income already taken out from your paycheck, accounted for. So you're only coming home with 20% of your paycheck per month. Now again, so if you account for the low credit scores, low down payments, as well as the DTI being so high, it's no wonder why some of these loans, or majority of these loans, are going into default. And in some cases, these borrowers only made 1 or 2 payments before they stopped making mortgage payments. And what happened is the FHA would put you on a forbearance, and they have a bunch of different programs, which I will go over with you and I will show you. I'll put the link in the description below so you can look at these programs that are available for the FHA borrowers. And what happens is then they don't make payments for 6 months, some of them for a year, some of them for up to 2 years. And what the Biden administration allowed was for those missed payments, the total balance, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was paid off by the taxpayer dollars. And for the borrower, that debt was just added on interest-free to the end of their loan. So if they had a 30-year loan, it just got added on all the way to the end, and they said, you'll pay this off at the end of the loan, or it was redistributed in a different way. However, it was still paid off. So the servicer, the bank that is holding the debt, still got paid by the U.S. government, and they just added that debt onto the borrower's future, into the future. After 30 years, they would be making that payment. So essentially, instead of letting that borrower default on that loan, and after 90 days of no payments, starting the foreclosure process and foreclosing on that property, letting it hit the market, However, what was happening is that the previous administration just kept adding on these mortgage payments to the end of the loans, preventing any type of foreclosure from happening and preventing anything from showing up on the market, and still adding to the supply and demand issue that we're already facing across many cities in the United States. And now you can see why the banks and mortgage providers love this FHA program, because they are not on the hook for anything. The US government is. So they're willing to give out these loans to these high risk subprime borrowers that are barely making ends meet today, but they can still pick up a loan and to go buy a house, and they will give them the loan and eventually stop paying the loan, because they also know there's ways out of it and they don't have to make mortgage payments for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on how much they can get away with. Now, some of these FHA programs that exist currently, and you can find this on the FHA administration's website, and I'll leave the link in the description for this. You can see that they have repayment plans, forbearance plans, payment deferral, and flexible modifications. So they have a variety of options to choose from, which include borrower not making a payment and it gets tacked on to the end of the mortgage, borrower not making the payment, and whatever that balance is due, they can spread it out across future payments. So there's, for instance, if you miss 6 months of payments, you can bundle them up, divide it up by the next 5 years, and slowly pay that debt off interest-free. You're also able to modify your loan, where they essentially up to 25% reduced your monthly mortgage payment, and it was covered by the US government, which was essentially paid by the taxpayers' money, and also lowered the interest rate for that FHA loan. Maybe even got rid of that private mortgage insurance that's on that loan, or reduced that private mortgage insurance. So a lot of these things were available. And again, this was open to anybody that got an FHA loan. All you had to do was close, make your first 1 or 2 or 3 payments, and boom, you can go right into this program. You didn't have to make any mortgage payments at all. And you're basically living, mortgage free for as long as you can until it gets tacked on, remodified, and you can live a year, 2 years completely mortgage free, paid off by everybody else. But eventually it's going to happen to you again, because if you defaulted one time, you're going to default eventually again. A lot of cities across the United States are facing a supply and demand issue. And while this might not fix the supply and demand issue, but this is definitely keeping a lot of houses off the market that can hit the market, help stabilize the prices on the market. Because this was hidden, you had this false narrative over the last 4 years that house prices are just going up, just going up, just going up, when in reality they weren't, or they weren't supposed to. They were at least stagnate or not increase as rapidly as they were. So if these houses are allowed to hit the market now, it will definitely give some kind of relief for the supply side in cities and states that are still seeing a high demand and less supply over there of houses on the market for sale. So you'll see a lot of more options come on. Let this go to another borrower. However, the FHA program needs a rehaul. It needs to get redone properly, and it just needs to make more sense when you're lending $500,000 to someone for a house, and the US government is backing that. And I believe there should be much more stricter regulation on it. You shouldn't be able to buy a house if you can't even prove that you're financially stable, you're not financially responsible, and your credit score is so low. You know what? Bring that credit score up to at least like a 650 minimum, which actually was the standard about 4 or 5, 6 years ago. 650 was the minimum, and then it slowly dropped down to 620, and then 580. I mean, what's next? 550? I mean, at that point, you can't even pay your cell phone bill, but you're going to be trusted to pay your mortgage payment? That doesn't make any sense. As well as these low down payments. So when you have these borrowers that are just coming in with low down payments, very low credit score, they have no incentive to pay the mortgage payment. They don't care about their credit scores. They came in with pennies into the property, and they don't care if they lose that amount of money, because if it's, for example, if it's a $500,000 house, they put down 3.5%, that's about $17,500. And if their mortgage payment per month is $3,000, I mean, they don't have to make a payment for just 6 months, which according to the current regulation, they'll just end up being able to tack it on to the end of their mortgage. Now they've broken even. So they didn't pay 6 months of payment. That's $18,000. They only came in with 17 and a half. So they've broken even. At this point, they're living for free. So they can continue doing that same cycle over and over again. Go ahead and make a payment, restart the forbearance, make the payment, restart the forbearance, and it just keeps getting added on. So they're essentially living mortgage free with no incentive. They can pack their bags, leave, and that entire debt will be the burden of the US government, because that entire loan, what those missed payments, everything is still backed by that debt is backed by the US government. So the bank will just have to send an invoice, it will get filled, and that's it. And you'll have a much bigger problem in your hand. So we need to allow these houses to hit the market. We need to let these borrowers vacate these properties that can't afford them. These houses need to come on the market. They will help stabilize the current housing situation. They'll help lower prices, or even, just keep the prices at a decent level for increasing. So they're increasing anywhere between 2 to 5% a year, not 10 to 15 to 20% because of supply demand issues. So I hope Bill Puylt, that's Trump's new pick for the FHA administration, really gets into it, understands the borrower's limit and how it compares to conventional loans, and they figure out certain ways, especially raising that threshold to get into a mortgage. Like, definitely that credit score is a big thing. Bump up that credit score to at least 620, 650. Your DTI should be a lot less. Somebody should not be able to buy a house if more than half of their paycheck is going to a mortgage payment. And that's pre-tax, so it's not post-tax income. So you want to definitely change that. Maybe bring that DTI down a little bit, increase the credit score. I believe you can keep the down payment low. That's fine. I don't think that's a big issue, because it gets offset by the PMI. So the lower down payment you put, the higher PMI you will have. So that might incentivize borrowers to come in with more down payment so they can have a cheaper PMI. But definitely, I think the barrier where a borrower can show their financial responsibility needs to be a little bit higher than where we have it now. We're at the bottom of the barrel. And at that point, you're going to have those borrowers that are just going to default on the property, and that's it. And I think another major issue is that FHA has been abused and used by investors, or somebody buying the property as an investment and not living there. Remember, FHA means that you have to own the property and live there yourself. So you can buy a multifamily. However, you have to occupy at least one of the units yourself, and you can rent out the other units. But what people are doing, what borrowers are doing, is they're using the FHA program to come in with a low down payment, low credit score, and buy up these multifamily properties, completely rent them out, still go on the forbearance program and tell the bank, hey, I can't make the payment for whatever reason. So they're on the forbearance for 6 months, 12 months, 24, whatever it is, while collecting rent. So not only are they generating income from the property, they're not making a mortgage payment, which is then again burdened by the taxpayer. And at the end of it, they'll just say, great, when this program ends, everything gets changed up. They'll say, great, no problem, take the money back, and it's your headache, whether the tenant moves out or not. Now you have the banks or the US government, because once it gets foreclosed on, it'll be taken over by the HUD department. And now it's their responsibility to get that property vacated or sold at a massive discount. So the losses aren't over yet. There's a lot more losses to come, especially with the million homes that are already defaulted on their FHA loans, and over 66% over leveraged with the DTI so high. There's going to be a lot more pain coming into the housing market, especially for the US government, because those bills are going to be due, and they're going to have to offset a lot of these properties. So if you're looking to buy a house and you want to wait it out a little bit, maybe in your region, I'll leave it again, another link in the description below. You can see what the default rate is in your state and in your city. And when those houses come on the market, they might be a little bit cheaper. But best know that there's going to be a bidding war for them, and they'll probably sell again at market value.